You have 72 hours to comply. The voice came through every speaker on Earth simultaneously. Every television, every phone, every radio. A tall alien figure filled every screen on the planet, its pale gray skin and enormous black eyes staring forward with the calm certainty of someone who had done this before. Many times before. Surrender your planet and accept integration into the Dominion, or be destroyed. The transmission ended, and for one breathless moment, the entire world went silent. 72 hours earlier, the first sign that something was wrong appeared deep inside the European Space Agency's monitoring network in Geneva. At first, the computers thought it was a sensor malfunction. 3 objects had appeared suddenly at the outer edge of the solar system, far beyond Pluto, where nothing should have been. The automated systems flagged them immediately. Their energy output was enormous, far greater than anything humanity had ever produced. Within seconds, telescopes across the planet began turning toward the anomaly. In Chile, the Atacama Observatory captured the first clear image. The astronomers staring at their screens went silent. The objects weren't asteroids. They weren't comets. They were ships. Each vessel was massive, larger than entire cities. Long black structures shaped like blades cutting through space. Their engines burned with a strange blue light that didn't resemble any known propulsion system. Within minutes, the data spread across the global scientific network. NASA confirmed the readings. The Chinese Deep Space Array confirmed them. Russia's orbital observatories confirmed them. 3 unknown spacecraft were approaching Earth, and they were moving fast. Inside the White House Situation Room, the President of the United States stared at the projection floating above the conference table. The room was filled with generals, scientists, and intelligence officials. A holographic display showed the 3 vessels crossing through the outer solar system, their icons dwarfing every human spacecraft in orbit. "Tell me this is a mistake," the President said quietly. No one answered immediately. Finally, the director of NASA cleared his throat. "It's not a mistake, sir." He tapped a control pad, and the display zoomed closer to the approaching vessels. "We estimate each ship to be roughly 12 kilometers long. Their energy signatures are extraordinary, enough to power entire continents." Silence filled the room. 17 minutes later, the alien ships crossed into the inner solar system. Every satellite on Earth began receiving the same signal. It appeared simultaneously across every communication system on the planet. Television broadcasts froze. Phones vibrated. Radio frequencies crackled. Billions of screens around the world flickered to life. Then the image appeared. The tall alien figure filled the display. Its skin was pale gray, its eyes large and black, and its body wrapped in a metallic uniform that seemed almost alive. Behind it stretched the interior of a massive command chamber filled with unfamiliar technology. When it spoke, its voice echoed through every speaker on Earth. Cold, calm, certain, people of Earth. For a moment, no one moved. The alien's eyes scanned the camera as if studying humanity itself. "I am High Ambassador Kale of the Sovereign Dominion." The words were translated instantly into every language. "Your world has been discovered and evaluated. You are a primitive species. You have not achieved faster-than-light travel. You possess no colonies beyond your home world, and your weapons are incapable of threatening our vessels." The ambassador leaned slightly closer to the camera. "In the name of the Dominion, an empire that governs over 10,000 worlds, I offer you a choice." Every heart on Earth seemed to stop. Surrender your planet and accept integration into the Dominion. The alien's voice dropped lower. Or be destroyed. The message hung in the air like a death sentence. You have 72 hours to comply. This is your only warning. The alien straightened. The transmission ended. Across the planet, billions of people stared at silent screens. For a moment, the world held its breath. Then chaos began. For the first hour after the alien broadcast, the entire world seemed frozen. People sat in front of televisions, phones, and computer screens, replaying the message again and again as if the meaning might somehow change. It didn't. Every translation said the same thing: surrender or be destroyed. Within minutes, emergency alerts spread across every nation. Governments activated crisis protocols that had never been used before. Military forces went to the highest alert levels in history. But behind the scenes, the truth was far worse than anyone outside the command centers realized. Humanity had absolutely no way to fight back. In Washington, Beijing, London, Moscow, the answer was exactly the same. Nothing we have can reach them. In every underground bunker, every war room, every emergency council chamber, the most powerful militaries on Earth ran the same calculations and arrived at the same conclusion. Our longest-range missiles couldn't get close. Even if they could, we had no way to guide them accurately that far into space. And even if we could do that, their energy output suggested shielding technology so far beyond ours that our most powerful weapons would likely bounce off their hulls like thrown stones. In Beijing, one scientist studying the data leaned back in his chair and said something quietly that no general wanted to hear. "They're not using conventional propulsion." "What does that mean?" a general asked. "It means our understanding of physics might be wrong." The general frowned. "That's not helpful." The scientist looked up at the screen again. "No," he said softly. "But it explains why we can't stop them." Across the internet, panic spread faster than any government announcement. Videos of the alien broadcast flooded social media. People argued, speculated, prayed, and demanded answers. Some believed it was a hoax. Others believed the end of the world had arrived. Supermarkets emptied within hours. Airports filled with travelers trying to reach loved ones. Religious leaders held emergency gatherings. Scientists gave interviews trying to explain what little they knew. But no explanation changed the reality. Earth had just received an ultimatum from an empire that ruled 10,000 worlds. And humanity couldn't even leave its own solar system. 24 hours after the message, the alien ships stopped moving. They positioned themselves in orbit just beyond Mars, far enough away to remain untouchable, close enough to watch everything happening on Earth. Satellites zoomed in on the vessels, and the images were chilling. Each ship was a fortress. Layered armor plates surrounded massive weapon structures that dwarfed entire buildings. Some scientists estimated that a single shot from one of those weapons could destroy a city. Or worse, back in Washington, the president sat alone in the Situation Room. Most of the advisors had left. There was nothing left to plan, nothing left to discuss. The president stared at the countdown timer on the wall. 48 hours remaining. "Is there really nothing we can do?" he asked quietly. The NASA director shook his head. "No, sir." The president leaned back in his chair. "So this is how it ends." No one answered. Because for the first time in human history, the entire planet faced an enemy it could not fight. And the clock was still ticking. Far beneath the Swiss Alps, however, there were 13 people sitting in a quiet room. And unlike the rest of the world, they were not afraid. The secure elevator descended through layers of reinforced rock and steel. The chamber it opened into was small, quiet, and deliberately plain. A long metal table sat in the center of the room. 13 chairs surrounded it. All 13 were occupied. On the wall behind the head of the table hung a single framed photograph, old, black and white, showing a Scottish laboratory from the year 1823. A room full of equipment that no longer existed. An experiment that had changed everything. The people sitting at that table represented no country and held no official titles. Their names did not appear in government records, and their authority came from an organization that technically did not exist. They were the Council of the Veil, and they had been preparing for this moment for nearly 2 centuries. At the head of the table sat Director Sarah Chun. She was a small woman in her 70s with sharp gray eyes that seemed to miss nothing. Her hair had long since turned silver, but the calm authority in her voice commanded the room immediately. "Confirmation," she said. A man with a Russian accent nodded as he studied the holographic display hovering above the table. 3 Dominion capital ships. Standard intimidation formation. Their energy signatures matched the records exactly. Around the room, the council members exchanged quiet glances. So it's finally happened. 200 years, and they found Earth anyway. Director Chen folded her hands. "Yes," she said calmly. "They did." But she did not sound worried. A large display on the wall showed the alien ships hovering near Mars. The same ships that had terrified the rest of humanity. But the council members did not react with fear. Instead, they studied the vessels with quiet focus. A military officer seated halfway down the table tapped her tablet. "Have they scanned beyond the inner solar system?" she asked. "No," the Russian delegate replied. "Their sensors are focused entirely on Earth." "Which means," another council member said slowly, "they still believe the illusion." For the first time in the meeting, Director Chun allowed herself a small smile. Then the veil is still holding. To the outside world, the veil was nothing more than a conspiracy theory whispered on obscure internet forums. But inside this chamber, everyone knew the truth. 2 centuries earlier, humanity had discovered something that changed the course of history forever. The universe was not empty, and somewhere out there, an empire ruled the stars. The discovery had happened long before satellites, before modern rockets, before anyone on Earth believed space travel was possible. In 1823, a physicist named Dr. James Morrison accidentally triggered a phenomenon that bent space itself. His experiment vanished from his laboratory in Scotland. 3 days later, it was discovered drifting above the moon. At the time, only a handful of governments understood what that meant. Humanity had discovered the first step toward faster-than-light travel. But the leaders of the world had also realized something else. If humans could travel between stars, then so could others. And announcing Earth's existence to the universe might attract exactly the wrong attention. So they made a decision that would shape the next 2 centuries. Earth would remain hidden. Director Chun looked around the room. Our ancestors created the veil to protect Earth, she said. To the outside universe, humanity would appear primitive, confined to a single planet, struggling with basic spaceflight. Another council member nodded. Meanwhile, he said quietly, we built something else. Director Chun tapped the table. The holographic display changed. Instead of showing the alien ships, it showed something far larger. A map of space. Dots of light filled the projection. Hundreds of them. These are our colonies, Chun said. 500 worlds across 200 light-years of space. The room remained silent. Every council member already knew this, but saying it aloud still carried weight. For 200 years, humanity had been quietly expanding into the darkness. Building, learning, preparing. A younger council member spoke up. Then we activate Olympus Protocol? Chun nodded once. Yes. Another council member frowned. If we do that, the secret ends. The world will know. Earth will know. Chun stood slowly from her chair. Her voice remained calm. The veil served its purpose. She looked toward the display showing the alien ships. But now the Dominion has come to our door. She turned back to the council. It's time for the galaxy to learn what humanity really is. The Russian delegate leaned forward. How long until our fleets arrive? A military officer checked the data. The nearest task force is 48 hours away. The main armada will need 70 hours. Another council member frowned. The alien ultimatum expires in 72 hours. That leaves almost no margin. Chin's smile returned. Then we stall. She pressed a small control panel built into the table. All governments will request negotiations, clarifications, diplomatic discussions. They'll believe humanity is panicking. She glanced at the live broadcasts of world leaders arguing across Earth, which technically is true. Chun straightened. Prepare the signal. One of the council members hesitated. Director, once this message is sent, every hidden colony will receive it. Chun nodded. Exactly. What should the message say? The room fell silent. Then Director Chun spoke the words that would echo across the stars. Authorization Omega-7 Alpha. She paused. Her eyes turned toward the image of Earth floating in space. That small blue light that 200 years of secrecy had kept alive. Tell them to come home. Far beyond the solar system, in places so remote that no alien empire had ever bothered to look, receivers that had been silent for 200 years suddenly activated. And across the darkness between stars, humanity began to move. The signal traveled outward at the speed of light. To Ambassador Kale and his fleet orbiting near Mars, it looked like a desperate broadcast from a primitive world begging for help. An old electromagnetic signal on a frequency humanity had used centuries earlier. Kale barely glanced at the report when it reached him. A distress signal, one of his officers suggested. Kale shook his head. A desperate species calling for help, he said with mild amusement. Let them hope. The officer removed the report from the active display. To the Dominion, the signal meant nothing. But beyond the solar system, the message reached places that had been waiting for it for 200 years. On a cold world orbiting a dim red star 90 light-years from Earth, a silent alarm activated deep inside an underground command facility. Rows of dormant consoles flickered to life. Screens illuminated. A calm artificial voice echoed through the chamber. Priority signal received. Authorization Omega-7 Alpha. Protocol Olympus activated. Admiral Marcus Chun had been asleep when the alert reached his quarters. He had expected this message his entire life. Every child born in the outer colonies grew up knowing that one day the signal might come. The call to return home. Marcus approached the central console as officers rushed into the room around him. Confirm the transmission, he ordered. It's authentic, Admiral. Origin, Earth. Marcus stared at the coordinates glowing on the display. For most of his life, Earth had been nothing more than a distant legend. A blue world his ancestors had left centuries ago. A world he had sworn to protect. He reached into his collar and touched the small medallion he had worn since he was a child. The same one every Void-born soldier wore. Inside it, sealed beneath a thin pane of glass, was a grain of dust. Just dust. But it had been collected from the shores of a coastline on Earth, pressed into a capsule, and carried out to the colonies 200 years ago. Every soldier who had ever trained and drilled and sacrificed in the darkness had worn one. A reminder of something most of them had never seen. A planet they would give their lives to protect without ever standing on its soil. Marcus closed his hand around the medallion. How long has it been? He asked quietly. 203 years since the Veil was established. He exhaled slowly. Then it's time. Across the colony world of New Prometheus, alarms began sounding. But instead of panic, there was purpose. Shipyards hidden within massive caverns beneath the planet's surface opened their armored doors. Massive warships that had been waiting in silence powered up for the first time. Engine cores ignited. Docking clamps released. And one by one, the vessels began rising toward space. These ships were nothing like the crude rockets humanity displayed on Earth. They were sleek, black war machines designed for stealth and overwhelming firepower, each one carrying weapons capable of shattering asteroids. And there were hundreds of them. New Prometheus was not alone. Across hundreds of hidden human colonies, the same message arrived and the same response unfolded. From a frozen moon orbiting a gas giant, destroyers launched from beneath kilometers of ice. From a massive asteroid base in deep space, rows of cruisers powered up as engineers raced through final system checks. From deep inside a nebula where no Dominion scout had ever ventured, a fleet of carriers activated their engines simultaneously. The same message echoed across every colony. Olympus Protocol. Return to Sol. Earth is threatened. Humanity had spent 2 centuries preparing for exactly this moment. While Earth appeared primitive and helpless, the Void-born colonies had been building something extraordinary. Entire worlds dedicated to a single purpose: defense. Some colonies specialized in industrial production, their factories hidden within asteroid belts where no alien sensors could easily detect them. Others focused on research and development, creating weapons and propulsion systems centuries beyond anything Earth possessed. And some worlds existed for only one reason: training soldiers. Children born in the void were raised knowing their purpose. They were the guardians of a planet they might never see. But they trained every day as if the signal might come tomorrow. And now it had. Back on New Prometheus, Admiral Marcus Chin stood on the bridge of his flagship. The vessel was called the Void's Promise. Outside the massive viewing ports, hundreds of ships were already gathering in orbit. Status, Marcus asked. Fleet Group 1 is ready for departure. 200 ships. Additional fleets are reporting from the outer colonies. Marcus looked at the strategic display. Dots of light began appearing across the map, one after another. Fleet groups jumping into formation. Estimated total strength. A moment later, the number appeared on the screen. Marcus allowed himself a small smile. 4,000 warships. And counting. Back in the solar system, Ambassador Kale stood on the bridge of his flagship watching the small blue planet on the screen with quiet confidence. Primitive. Divided. Helpless. Just like dozens of other worlds he had conquered during his long career. He had delivered the same ultimatum to 47 species. None of them had survived defiance. Humanity would be no different. 40 hours remaining, one of his officers reported. Kale nodded. Let them panic. He had seen this before. Desperate negotiations. Last-minute pleas. Civilizations begging for mercy. It never changed the outcome. What Kale did not know was that beyond the reach of his sensors, space itself had begun to move. Ships were arriving silently across the outer solar system. They appeared like shadows against the darkness. Thousands of them. Their hulls coated in materials that absorbed radiation and masked their energy signatures. To Dominion scanners, the region still looked empty. But the truth was far more dangerous. Humanity's hidden fleet was forming a sphere around the solar system. Waiting, watching, preparing. On Earth, the countdown continued. Governments stalled. Diplomats asked endless questions. Scientists pretended to search for solutions they knew did not exist. To Ambassador Kale, it looked exactly like what he expected, a primitive species delaying the inevitable. But beneath the Swiss Alps, Director Sarah Chun watched a very different display. The map showed the solar system, and hundreds of new signals were appearing one by one. Human ships. Returning home. First fleet elements have arrived. 200 ships so far. Additional fleets arriving every minute. Chun studied the growing armada. After 2 centuries of secrecy, humanity's greatest weapon was finally revealing itself. The alien ultimatum had been meant to terrify Earth. Instead, it had awakened something the Dominion had never seen before. A civilization that had spent generations preparing for war in silence. The Black Armada was coming home. 71 hours and 58 minutes after the Dominion ultimatum, Ambassador Kale stood calmly on the bridge of his flagship. The countdown timer glowed on the command display. 2 minutes remaining. Kale had already decided how the first strike would unfold. He would destroy a single city. Not the largest. Not the most important. Just enough to demonstrate what happened when a civilization refused to obey the Dominion. In his experience, the destruction of one city was usually enough to convince an entire planet to surrender. It had worked 47 times before. He expected it to work again. Prepare the opening bombardment, Kale ordered. Across the bridge, Dominion officers moved efficiently at their stations. Targeting systems activated. Energy reactors began channeling power toward the primary weapons. Ambassador, which target should we select? Kale studied the holographic map of Earth rotating above the command table. Cities glittered across the planet's surface. So many. So fragile. Select a coastal population center, Kale said calmly. Something visible from orbit. The officer entered the coordinates. The weapon system confirmed lock. The alien cannon began charging. On Earth, billions of people watched the alien ships through live satellite feeds. The giant vessels looked like dark knives hanging in space. And everyone knew what was coming. The countdown had reached its final minute. In the White House Situation Room, the president stared at the same images. Is there anything left to try? He asked quietly. The room remained silent. Back on the Dominion flagship, the timer reached 0. Fire, Kale said. A brilliant blue beam of plasma erupted from the front of the alien vessel. The weapon shot toward Earth at unimaginable speed. It would reach the planet in less than 10 seconds. Enough energy to vaporize a city. Enough power to make an example. But the beam never reached Earth. Halfway through its journey, something intercepted it. A flash of light exploded in space. The alien plasma bolt collided with another projectile. The two energies annihilated each other in a violent burst of radiation. For a moment, the Dominion bridge fell completely silent. Then the sensor alarms began screaming. Report. Kale snapped. Unknown projectile intercepted our shot, Ambassador. Kale frowned. From where? The officer hesitated. I don't know. Another officer suddenly looked up from the sensor station. Ambassador, we are detecting gravitational distortions across the entire sector. How many? Kale demanded. The officer swallowed. Hundreds. Kale turned toward the main viewing screen. At first, he saw nothing. Just the usual darkness of space. Then the stars began to disappear. One by one, tiny points of light blinked out across the sky. Not because of clouds. Not because of debris. Because something massive was moving between the Dominion fleet and the distant stars. Shapes slowly materialized from the darkness. Black. Silent. Enormous. Ships. Hundreds of them. Then thousands. The vessels appeared in perfect formation, surrounding the 3 Dominion ships from every direction. Above. Below. Ahead. Behind. The alien fleet was completely encircled. Kale stared at the display. This is impossible. His intelligence reports had been clear. Humanity had no space fleet. Their technology barely allowed them to reach their own moon. And yet more ships continued emerging from the darkness. Each one sleek and black, designed for combat. Each one armed. Each one aimed directly at the Dominion vessels. Count them, Kale ordered. 2,347 ships in immediate range. The officer looked up, visibly shaken. They're all warships. Kale felt something unfamiliar stir in his chest. Concern. Where had these ships come from? How could an entire fleet appear without being detected? And why had Dominion intelligence missed it completely? Suddenly, the communications console lit up. Incoming transmission. Origin. Human vessel. Kale hesitated, then nodded. Put it on screen. The image appeared instantly. A human man filled the display. He looked to be around 50 years old, with short dark hair streaked with gray. His expression was calm and focused, the face of someone completely in control of the situation. Behind him, through the viewport of his ship's bridge, the surrounding fleet was clearly visible. The human spoke first. Ambassador Kale. His voice was steady. You have threatened our home world. Kale stared at him. This is impossible, he said. Your species does not possess a fleet. The human tilted his head slightly. Your intelligence, he replied, knows nothing about us. Kale's hands tightened behind his back. Identify yourself. The human met his gaze without hesitation. Admiral Marcus Chun, commander of the Black Armada. Around Kale's flagship, thousands of human warships slowly adjusted their positions. Weapons powered up. Targeting systems locked. The Dominion fleet, which had arrived expecting to conquer a helpless world, suddenly found itself surrounded by a force far larger than anyone had imagined. Kale spoke again. You are interfering with a lawful Dominion expansion. Marcus Chun didn't even blink. You gave Earth 72 hours to surrender. He leaned slightly closer to the camera. That was your first mistake. Kale felt the balance of power shifting. Something was terribly wrong. But before he could respond, Marcus issued a quiet order. Tactical. Begin demonstration. Across the human fleet, weapons activated simultaneously. Thousands of targeting systems locked onto the 3 Dominion vessels. For the first time in centuries of conquest, the Dominion Empire realized something terrifying. They had not arrived at a helpless world. They had walked into a trap. Admiral Marcus Chun stood on the bridge of the Void's Promise, watching the 3 Dominion ships drift helplessly inside the sphere of human warships. Around them, the Black Armada held perfect formation. More than 2,000 vessels surrounded the alien fleet, their black hulls almost invisible against the darkness of space. Every gun was aimed, every targeting system locked. But Marcus didn't give the order to destroy them. Not yet. He wanted Kale to understand exactly what had happened. On the Dominion flagship, Kale studied the tactical display in disbelief. 3 Dominion capital ships, surrounded by over 2,000 unknown human warships. Every escape vector blocked. Every weapon pointed inward. His officers spoke nervously across the bridge. Ambassador, their ships are powering weapons. Shield levels rising. Targeting systems locked on all 3 vessels. Kale clenched his jaw. The Dominion had conquered thousands of worlds. But they had never faced a situation like this. How did they hide a fleet this large? One officer whispered. No one had an answer. Marcus Chun looked at his tactical officer. Begin Phase 1. The first attack did not come from energy weapons. Instead, dozens of small objects launched from the human fleet. Missiles. But not ordinary missiles. These were kinetic kill vehicles, solid tungsten projectiles accelerated to extreme velocities. They required no exotic energy systems, no visible power signatures, just physics. And at high enough speed, physics was devastating. Impact in 3 seconds. Kale's sensor station erupted with alarms. Ambassador. Incoming objects. Energy signatures minimal. Velocity extremely high. Intercept them. Dominion point defense systems opened fire. Laser turrets and plasma cannons blasted the approaching projectiles. Some were destroyed, but not all. 3 missiles slammed into the side of the Dominion flagship. The impact was catastrophic. Not explosive, just raw kinetic force. The hull dented inward like paper struck by a hammer. Shockwaves rippled through the ship's structure. Across the bridge, alarms screamed. Damage report. Hull breaches on decks 12 through 16. Structural stress across the port side. Shield systems struggling to compensate. Kale stared at the display. Dominion shields were designed to absorb energy weapons, not solid objects traveling at fractions of light speed. The humans had designed their weapons specifically to exploit that weakness. Enemy shields adapting, Marcus's tactical officer noted. Good, Marcus said. Phase 2. From dozens of human ships, a second wave of missiles launched. These were smaller, stranger. Instead of striking directly, they attached themselves to the hulls of the Dominion ships. Kale's engineers stared in confusion. Ambassador, they're not exploding. Then the readings began changing. Dominion shield generators flickered. Power systems fluctuated. They're emitting interference patterns. They're disrupting our quantum shield matrix. Kale's eyes widened. That's impossible. But it wasn't. Humanity had spent 2 centuries studying Dominion technology and designing ways to defeat it. A young Dominion officer looked up from his console, his voice barely above a whisper. Ambassador, shields are gone. 30 seconds later, the Dominion shields collapsed entirely. Proceed to Phase 3, Marcus ordered. Across the Black Armada, railguns fired. Long metal projectiles accelerated down magnetic tracks at incredible speed. The shots streaked across space. Without shields, the Dominion ships were suddenly, completely vulnerable. One railgun strike smashed directly into a Dominion engine array. The massive structure collapsed under the impact. Secondary explosions rippled through the engineering section. Another projectile tore through a weapon mount, sending debris spinning into space. Within minutes, all 3 Dominion ships were disabled. Their engines destroyed. Their weapons offline. Their communication systems jammed. They drifted silently in space. Completely helpless. On the Dominion flagship, Ambassador Kale slowly sat down in his command chair. His fleet had been defeated in less than 10 minutes, and the humans still had not used their full firepower. How? He whispered. His tactical officer looked up. Ambassador, they're not trying to destroy us. They're targeting systems precisely. Engines, weapons, communications. They're disabling us. Marcus Chin opened a communication channel. Ambassador Kale. The alien appeared on the screen, floating slightly as damaged gravity systems struggled to stabilize the ship. Marcus leaned forward slightly. You came to Earth expecting a primitive species. He gestured behind him toward the thousands of ships surrounding the Dominion fleet. But humanity has spent 200 years preparing for exactly this moment. Your ships are disabled. Your weapons are offline. And your calls for reinforcements are being jammed. He paused. This battle is over. The Dominion ambassador said nothing, because he knew the human admiral was right. The greatest empire in the galaxy had just been stopped by a species it believed was primitive. Marcus leaned back slightly. However, he continued calmly, we are not the Dominion. We do not destroy helpless enemies. Kale looked up. Then what happens now? Marcus's expression hardened. Now you carry a message. 3 weeks later, Ambassador Kale's damaged flagship finally reached Dominion territory. The once proud vessel looked nothing like the unstoppable warship that had entered the solar system. Its hull was scarred with massive craters. Entire weapon batteries were twisted wreckage. The main engine array had been partially replaced with temporary drives just to make the journey home. Every Dominion officer who saw the ship understood the same thing immediately. Something had gone terribly wrong. Deep inside Dominion space, the Imperial War Council assembled. 47 representatives from the most powerful species within the Dominion Empire sat in a vast circular chamber carved from dark crystal. At the center stood a raised platform. Ambassador Kale stood alone upon it. Above them floated a massive projection of Earth's solar system, and surrounding the small blue planet, thousands of human warships. At the highest tier of the chamber stood the Dominion's supreme military commander, War Master Theros. He was enormous, nearly 3 meters tall, covered in armored scales evolved from the brutal gravity of his home world. 6 eyes stared down from the shadows. His voice was deep enough to vibrate through the chamber. You claim a primitive species defeated 3 Dominion capital ships. Kale did not try to defend himself. He simply nodded. Yes, War Master. Murmurs spread through the council. Some laughed in disbelief. Others looked disturbed. Kale described everything. The sudden appearance of thousands of human warships. The kinetic weapons that bypassed Dominion shields. The devices that disabled their technology. The precise tactical coordination of the human fleet. And the message delivered by Admiral Marcus Chun. When Kale finished, the chamber fell silent. This is impossible, one council member said. No species could hide an empire of this scale, added another. But one representative, an older diplomat named Vesh, spoke quietly. Or perhaps they hid exactly because they understood what would happen if they were discovered. The chamber grew uneasy. The Dominion Empire had ruled the galaxy for centuries. Entire civilizations surrendered at the mere sight of their fleets. But this time, something had fought back. War Master Theros stood slowly. All empires encounter resistance. Rebellions. Insurgents. Minor wars. He turned his massive gaze toward Kale. But the Dominion does not allow humiliation. This human species believes it can threaten us. He spread his arms. Then we will remind them why the Dominion rules 10,000 worlds. Within hours, orders spread across the empire. Every major fleet was recalled. Shipyards accelerated production. Reserve forces were mobilized. Across Dominion territory, thousands of warships began gathering. The largest invasion force assembled in over a century. 5,000 warships. Enough to destroy entire star systems. But the humans already knew. In the depths of space, hidden listening posts monitored Dominion communications. Some were disguised as asteroids. Others were cloaked satellites drifting silently between stars. Every one of them transmitted intelligence back to human space. Within days, the information reached the Vale Council. Deep beneath the Swiss Alps, Director Sarah Chun studied the holographic display showing the growing Dominion Armada. Fleet formations appeared one by one. 5,000 vessels confirmed. Marcus Chin appeared on the conference screen from New Prometheus. In a straight fight, he said, they outnumber us. 3-1. The room fell silent. Then Marcus smiled slightly. Good. Sarah Chin looked at him. You expected this. Marcus nodded. For 200 years. He pointed to the map. They think we're defending planets. But we're not. He leaned forward. We're defending territory. 3 months later, the Dominion fleet entered human space. War Master Theros stood proudly on the bridge of his flagship. 5,000 warships stretched across space behind him. The largest military force the Dominion had deployed in generations. This war will end quickly, he said confidently. But when the fleet arrived at the edge of human territory, they found nothing. No ships. No defensive fleets. No resistance. Just empty space. Where are they? We detect abandoned facilities on nearby asteroids. Mining stations. Habitats. Shipyards. All empty. One of the Dominion commanders laughed. They're running. But Vesh shook his head. No. He looked at the stars. They're waiting. 3 days later, the trap was sprung. Without warning, the empty debris fields surrounding the Dominion fleet came alive. Thousands of objects that sensors had dismissed as rocks suddenly activated engines. They weren't rocks. They were mines. And they were everywhere. The weapons swarmed the Dominion fleet from every direction. Hundreds of ships were struck in seconds. Explosions rippled through the formation. Theros roared in fury. Destroy them. Dominion weapons opened fire, blasting hundreds of mines apart. But thousands more remained hidden among the debris. Each attack caused more damage. Each loss slowed the advance. And still the human fleet never appeared. Over the next weeks, the Dominion Armada pushed deeper into human space. But every system was the same. Abandoned stations, empty colonies, and hidden weapons everywhere. Railgun platforms concealed inside asteroids. Missile silos hidden beneath moons. Stealth drones attacking supply convoys. The Dominion fleet was not fighting ships. It was fighting an entire civilization built for war. 2 months into the campaign, War Master Theros finally realized the truth. The humans were bleeding his fleet slowly. Ship by ship. Convoy by convoy. Ambush by ambush. He slammed his fist onto the command console. They will not fight us directly. Vesh spoke quietly beside him. They don't need to. Theros stared at the display showing Earth's location. He could feel the strategy now. He could feel the shape of it pressing in around him. Every abandoned colony they found, every mine they cleared, every ambush they survived, it was all pointing them in the same direction. Herded, guided, invited. His voice became cold. If they refuse battle, we force them to defend their home world. 5,000 Dominion warships turned toward the solar system, toward Earth, toward the place humanity would never abandon, and exactly where the humans wanted them to go. At the edge of the solar system, Admiral Marcus Chun watched the Dominion fleet approach. Behind him, the Black Armada gathered once more. Thousands of ships, every weapon ready, every defense system active. He took the bait, Marcus said quietly. An officer looked at the approaching armada. This will be the largest battle in human history. Marcus nodded. Yes. Then he looked toward the blue planet behind them. But it will also be the last one they ever fight against Earth. The Dominion fleet arrived at the edge of the solar system like a dark storm moving across space. Thousands of warships emerged from faster-than-light travel one after another, their massive forms spreading across millions of kilometers. War Master Theros stood on the bridge of his flagship staring at the tactical display with satisfaction. Over 4,000 warships had survived the long march through human territory. Even after weeks of ambushes and hidden traps, the Dominion still possessed overwhelming force. More than enough to destroy a single planet. Formation Delta, Theros ordered. The massive fleet spread into organized battle groups. Each group contained destroyers, carriers, and heavy battleships arranged in layered formations designed for planetary assault. Ahead of them lay their target, Earth, a small blue world orbiting a yellow star. Primitive, defiant, soon to be conquered. On the opposite side of the solar system, Admiral Marcus Chun watched the same fleet on his tactical display. The Dominion ships appeared as thousands of red markers moving toward the inner planets. Behind Marcus, the Bridge of the Void's promise was calm. Human crews had trained for this moment their entire lives. No panic, no fear, just focus. How many? Marcus asked. 4,100 Dominion vessels confirmed. All defensive systems in the solar system are online. Marcus nodded slowly. Because this battle would not be fought by the Black Armada alone. For 200 years, humanity had quietly transformed the entire solar system into a fortress. Mars held massive underground factories that secretly produced weapons. The asteroid belt hid thousands of railgun stations disguised as mining facilities. Even the moon contained concealed defense batteries buried beneath kilometers of rock. Every planet, every moon, every major asteroid, all part of a single, enormous defensive network. The Dominion had entered the most dangerous territory in human space. And they didn't even realize it. Let them come closer, Marcus said. The Dominion fleet continued advancing toward the inner system. For several minutes, nothing happened. Then the first trap activated. Weapons platforms hidden among the outer asteroids powered on simultaneously. What had once appeared to be abandoned research stations suddenly revealed their true purpose. Massive railguns rotated toward the Dominion fleet. Thousands of tungsten projectiles launched at incredible speed. The shots streaked through space like invisible spears. Dominion ships exploded across the formation as the impact struck. Several vessels lost engines instantly. Others were torn open by the sheer force of the projectiles. Return fire. Theros roared. Dominion warships unleashed plasma cannons and particle beams. The outer defense stations were destroyed one by one, but they had already served their purpose. The first layer of the solar system's defenses had been triggered. Moments later, the mines activated. These were not the simple traps used earlier in the campaign. These were hunter-killer mines. Thousands of them. They launched from hidden positions within the asteroid belt and accelerated toward the Dominion fleet in coordinated swarms. Each mine communicated with the others through an AI network. If a Dominion ship destroyed one, 3 more would adjust their course. Dominion point defense systems fired continuously. Hundreds of mines exploded in brilliant flashes of light. But thousands more reached their targets. Explosions erupted throughout the Dominion formation. Entire squadrons vanished in seconds. Theros watched the losses with growing anger. Push through. We still outnumber them. The fleet advanced deeper toward Earth. But every kilometer closer to the planet brought new dangers. Missile batteries hidden beneath Martian mountains fired volleys of hypersonic warheads. Railgun platforms concealed within the asteroid belt launched new waves of projectiles. And still the human fleet had not appeared. Finally, the Dominion Armada reached the inner solar system. Earth was now clearly visible, and that was when the Black Armada revealed itself. Human warships erupted from hiding across the system. Some emerged from behind the moon. Others appeared from the shadows of Mars. More rose from the depths of the asteroid belt where they had been waiting silently. Within minutes, thousands of human vessels surrounded the Dominion fleet, not with superior numbers, but with superior positioning. Every approach to Earth was blocked. Every Dominion formation trapped within overlapping lines of fire. War Master Theros growled. At last, a real battle. Admiral Marcus Chen watched the Dominion fleet reorganize. Exactly as expected, Dominion doctrine relied on overwhelming frontal assaults, massive waves of ships pushing directly through enemy defenses. It had worked against thousands of civilizations, but humanity had designed their tactics specifically to counter it. Tactical, Marcus said calmly. Execute pattern Omega. The Black Armada moved like a single organism. Instead of holding static positions, human ships constantly shifted their formations in three-dimensional space. Some vessels dove beneath the Dominion formations. Others climbed above them. Dozens swung around planets using gravitational slingshot maneuvers. Dominion targeting systems struggled to keep up. Their weapons fired into empty space again and again. Meanwhile, human weapons struck from every direction. Quantum disruptor missiles attached themselves to Dominion hulls, collapsing shield systems. Railgun projectiles shattered armor. Gravity warheads tore apart entire ship formations from the inside. And above all of it, thousands of autonomous drones filled the battlefield. Small, fast, disposable, but deadly. The drones swarmed Dominion ships in waves, overwhelming their defenses. A single human warship could deploy hundreds of them. The Dominion fleet suddenly found itself fighting not just ships, but tens of thousands of coordinated attack units moving with a single shared intelligence. The battle raged for 6 hours. Ship after ship vanished from the Dominion formation. Explosions lit the darkness of space like artificial stars. Humanity lost ships too. 300 vessels destroyed or crippled in the grinding exchange. Their crews who had spent their whole lives preparing for this moment, giving everything they had. By the end of the 6th hour, the result was undeniable. More than half of the Dominion fleet had been destroyed. The rest were crippled or retreating. Even War Master Theros's flagship had been struck repeatedly by gravity warheads. Systems across the massive vessel were failing. Counselor Vesh approached the command platform quietly. We must withdraw. Theros remained silent. He knew the truth. The Dominion had lost. A transmission appeared on the flagship's damaged display. Admiral Marcus Chun. War Master Theros. Marcus said calmly. Your fleet is broken. You have lost over 2,000 ships. Your supply lines are gone, and you will not reach Earth. Theros stared at him. Then finish it. Marcus shook his head. We could destroy what remains of your fleet, but we will not. Theros frowned. Why? Marcus leaned forward slightly. Because humanity does not conquer. We defend. He paused. Leave our space, and do not return. For several seconds, the Dominion bridge remained silent. Then Theros slowly lowered his head. Order the retreat. The surviving Dominion ships turned away from Earth. And for the first time in centuries, the Dominion Empire withdrew from a battlefield. Behind them, the Black Armada held position. Silent guardians of the small blue world. Humanity had defended its home, and the galaxy would never forget it. The last Dominion ships disappeared into the darkness beyond the edge of the solar system. For the first time in weeks, space grew quiet. Debris from thousands of destroyed vessels drifted slowly between the planets, glowing faintly in the light of the sun. The battle for Earth was over, and humanity had won. Across the Black Armada, celebrations erupted. Crew members who had spent their entire lives training for this moment finally allowed themselves to breathe. Some laughed. Others simply sat down at their stations in stunned silence. Many of them had been born in the void, raised on distant colonies that had never known sunlight or oceans or rain. They had fought for a world they had never seen. And now that world was safe. On Earth, billions of people watched the final Dominion ships retreat through live satellite broadcasts. At first, no one moved. No one spoke. After 72 hours of fear and months of war, the human mind struggled to process what had just happened. Then slowly, cheers began. Cities across the planet erupted in celebration. People flooded the streets. Strangers hugged each other. Church bells rang. Fireworks exploded in the night sky. Humanity had faced a galactic empire and survived. Deep beneath the Swiss Alps, the former headquarters of the Veil was quiet. Director Sarah Chun stood alone in the operations center, watching the tactical map fade as the battle ended. For 200 years, the Veil had protected Earth in silence. Entire generations had lived and died keeping the secret. And now the secret was no longer necessary. One of her assistants approached her carefully. It's over, he said softly. Chun nodded. Yes. Her voice was calm, but tears glistened in her eyes. 2 centuries of sacrifice had finally been proven worthwhile. Earth was still standing. 3 weeks later, Admiral Marcus Chin stepped onto the surface of Earth for the first time. The transport shuttle landed in a forest clearing in northern Canada. When the hatch opened, Marcus paused for a moment at the top of the ramp. He had spent his entire life in space. Every breath he had ever taken came from recycled air systems. Every sky he had ever seen had been artificial. Now, real wind touched his face. He stepped onto the ground slowly. Grass bent beneath his boots. Above him stretched an endless blue sky, filled with drifting clouds. Marcus took a deep breath. Fresh air filled his lungs. For a moment, he simply stood there, absorbing the sensation. Then it began to rain. Soft drops of water fell from the clouds. Marcus looked up as the rain touched his face. He laughed quietly. All his life he had fought to protect this world. And only now did he truly understand why. Nearby, Sarah Chen watched him with a gentle smile. "You finally made it home," she said. Marcus turned toward her. "It's different than I imagined." "Better?" she asked. Marcus nodded slowly. "Much better." They stood in silence for a moment, listening to the rain fall through the forest. Then Marcus asked the question that had lingered in his mind since the battle ended. Was it worth it? Sarah looked around at the world they had fought to protect. Trees, rivers, the smell of rain on soil, the sound of birds hidden among the branches. She thought of the first colonists who had left Earth centuries ago knowing they would never return. The generations born in the void who sacrificed normal lives to guard a planet they had never seen. The soldiers who had died defending humanity from the shadows. The 300 ships that had not made it home. Finally she nodded. Yes. She looked up at the sky where the Black Armada still patrolled silently above the clouds. It was worth everything. In the years that followed, humanity changed forever. The veil was officially dissolved. Earth and the void colonies revealed themselves to each other for the first time. Trade routes opened between hundreds of human worlds. Scientists from Earth traveled to the stars. And the children of the void finally visited the home planet their ancestors had protected for 2 centuries. The Black Armada remained in space, no longer a secret, but still vigilant, because the galaxy was vast, and somewhere beyond the stars, new civilizations were watching, learning, wondering about the species that had hidden in silence for 200 years, then defeated one of the most powerful empires in the universe. One evening, years after the war, Marcus Chin stood outside his home looking up at the stars. Beside him stood his young daughter. She pointed toward a bright star shining in the sky. "Is that where you used to live?" she asked. Marcus smiled. "Yes, that's New Prometheus. Your grandmother still lives there." The girl looked up at the endless sky. "Will I go there someday?" Marcus placed a hand on her shoulder. "If you want to. The stars belong to all of us now." She smiled. "Then I want to see everything." Marcus laughed softly. "That's exactly what your ancestors hoped for." He looked up at the stars once more. For centuries, humanity had hidden in darkness to survive. Not out of weakness, out of wisdom. They had understood something that the Dominion, with all its power and all its conquered worlds, had never learned. That the most dangerous force in the universe is not the empire that shouts its strength from the stars. It is the civilization that stays quiet, that builds in secret, that sacrifices generation after generation for a purpose bigger than any single life. And now the galaxy knew the truth. Humanity did not seek war, but it would always protect its home. And if any empire ever threatened Earth again, the Black Armada would be waiting. Silent, patient, ready. If this story pulled you in, if you want to know what happens when the galaxy finally comes knocking again, make sure you're here for part 2. Because the Dominion learned a lesson. But not every empire in the stars was watching.